Kanari Drives in Nagano Prefecture. Snow. A beautiful thing, unless it falls all over your windshield while you're driving. We get a lot of it in the winter. Depends on the year, of course. These videos were taken between 2013 and 2016, while I drove around in various cars that I've driven in the past 8 years. It usually snows between December and March, but sometimes it varies. Sometimes we get snow in November, and sometimes we get snow in April or even early May, which is strange. It can get really, really cold in Nagano. Of course, it's a lot worse up north, but even in central and southern Nagano, close to Aichi Prefecture, you can find areas that get heavy amounts of snow depending on how close you are to the mountains. This area here where I'm driving is close to the mountains, so there's quite a bit of snow that's hanging around over the fields. If I think back to the time when I was driving, the car I was driving was probably a K car, which means it's a car that has half an engine, and it's the small cars that you often see in Japanese films or documentaries that have the very short fronts and they look like little boxes. But in other videos that I took, I was driving different kinds of cars, such as full-size cars, or depending on whatever I could use at the time. I came here originally to teach English to preschool students. I worked at 9 preschools around the entirety of this small town. So I learned the map very quickly. Basically, this little town has streets that mostly connect. There's very few that don't. And in that way, it's like a big wagon wheel. It's easy to find your way, even if there's little tiny streets, because you know that they'll connect with each other. There's also a lot of interesting houses to look at. Some older houses, some newer houses. The styles are quite different from where you live, I would guess. Where I grew up, the houses were quite different, so I thought it was interesting to see how they would look in various seasons. You can also see that we have a lot of factories in this area, and a lot of agricultural areas as well, including farming and raising of animals. As you come towards the main city, well, it's not really city, this is more of the main town areas, you'll see that it becomes more populated. However, it's still quite a small area, and you can see that there are no large high-rise buildings like Tokyo or anything else such as that. It's a very different experience. And of course, it's quite different because the area is covered with snow in comparison to other seasons where you can see the rice fields or the fields where the vegetables are growing. At this point, it's all covered in white. Driving in the snow is a really interesting experience. At first, I wasn't used to it. The area that I grew up in didn't get a lot of snow, and when it did, everything was canceled. Even a little tiny bit of snow and the whole place shut down. Everybody panic bought everything from Home Depot or wherever. It was just a very different experience. So when I moved out here and it snowed and my car didn't have the tires changed and I didn't know that I needed to shovel out my car, I called up my company and I said, "Hey, it's snowing. Does that mean school's canceled today?" And they said, "Oh no, you're supposed to be there in 10 minutes." And I'm like, "Okay, let me go dig my car out with a fork. I don't know. What do I have?" So when you come out here, you have to be ready to deal with the cold and the snow. We also don't have a lot of insulation in older building, so prepare yourself. Wear some wool. Wear your layers, because it gets real cold out here. And you can see, of course, that snow can really stick, depending on, how cold it gets, and sometimes the roads can be quite icy too, so you need to be careful when you drive and make sure that you put on your studless tires. You don't normally need chains. Chains are not necessary for this area unless you're going up into ski resorts or something that require them. Then they will have an area marked off to change to chains. But most areas, they properly salt the roads and shovel them off with either by hand or with a machine. As you can see here, it looks like a machine has come through in the morning and taken out all the snow so that people could go to work and school. And as you can see there, there's even kids and workers from various factory areas. They walk home in the snow, and it's just a normal deal. Especially if this continues and we get a lot of snow. Some years it'll be all the way through January and February. Our area will be covered with white, and you gotta get out your snow boots and prepare yourself. As you can see, that some of these videos have better resolution, higher quality, better stability than others. This is a compilation of all the videos I could find that I've taken in various situations when I was driving with either an iPhone 5, an Android Aquos phone, and possibly an iPhone 7, but I have a feeling that none of these were quite at that point yet. So, of course, some of these areas, if you ever come out here to Nagano and visit, will look a bit different, especially that area with the construction over there. That's done. This was probably 2015, I'm guessing, somewhere around there when I took this video. And of course, over time things will change, but I thought I'd show you a little bit of what Nagano can look like in the winter. And of course, the snow looks a lot different in the evening too. When I was listening to the audio that was not good, I took the audio out of all of these due to the poor quality. Usually, whatever device I was using to record these videos was right next to the dashboard, and it had very poor quality of audio. Or there were people talking that were sitting next to me or something, and I didn't want to leave that in, so I went ahead and cut those out. But this one was taken around Christmas time because I was listening to Christmas music, and I'm guessing that this is probably around 4 p.m. It usually gets pretty dark between 3 and 4 around Christmas. We don't have daylight savings time in Japan, so we get really short days around the end of December. It'll be dark in the morning and dark at night. Not even at night, in that late afternoon, it already be pitch dark sometimes, so that's something also that is a little different out here. So why did I come to Japan anyways? For me, I started studying Japanese at 12 years old. I was introduced to Japan by a friend who gave me a DVD, who I'm still friends with now, of Spirited Away, Hayao Miyazaki's, one of his most famous films from the early 2000s, also known under Studio Ghibli's library. And I remember thinking, wow, this is super different than what I grew up around, and I really want to know a lot more about this language and this country. And I just decided I was going to put my whole heart into studying for a long time. At first it was from dictionaries, whatever I could get my hands on, really, because there weren't a lot of Japanese people in the town that I grew up in the US. So I'm American, by the way, if you didn't already know that. And I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, so Portland area. I came from that area growing up, an only child who was basically, grown up in a normal nuclear family household kind of situation. And it was a good experience growing up where I did, I think. But also, I think I really had a lot of an adventurous spirit about what I wanted to do in my life, and just being introduced to a culture that I wasn't even aware of and didn't know a whole lot about, besides Pokemon cards, when I was a kid, was a big, it had a big impact on my life. And I still have to remind myself that now, as I've lived here for a long time, and living in Japan has become the norm for me. Now it's 2021 and I basically can't leave due to my residential status. I wouldn't be able to leave the country at this time. Neither can I come back, return to the country if I happen to leave for much reason. Of course, that's always changing. So if you're in a similar situation where you can't leave where you are, I recommend that you check your local government's website and find out as much information as you can. Unfortunately, for people who are not half Japanese, they cannot be dual citizens no matter if they get married or not. I am married to a Japanese citizen, but I do not have a citizenship of Japan, which means that I have different freedoms than other people. And there are pros and cons to that. But I am definitely looking forward to being able to go back and see my family in the US when I next have the chance to do so. For now, I'm doing my best with where I'm at and what I can do now, and spending time with my husband and his family. And of course, my husband is also from around here. He grew up in this area, in Nagano, and not Nagano City, but Nagano Prefecture. And I've learned a lot about the area through him as well. So I've definitely had a really special experience living out here. And of course, I also studied abroad, as I mentioned before. I started studying at 12, and once I had the opportunities to be able to go to Japan, the first time was also in Nagano Prefecture, but a slightly different area, another small town. And that was when I was 16. And at that time, I came and realized that my year of Japanese at the community college that I took at 14 was not going to be enough for me to really get into communicating with people around here. When you're out in the boondocks, shall we say, Japanese is a little different too, depending on the areas where you live. Of course, it's the same as anywhere else in the world. Different areas have different dialects and different local language. And even coming here in 2013 after college with a Japanese major, I was not prepared to know all the lingo to work at the preschool. All the things that you would learn that you need to know at the preschool, like, just all sorts of, kid words. Those are not things you learn at university. And if you're going to be working with kids coming back here and you don't have the experience of doing so, you'll be in for a ride for learning that Japanese. Because I don't like to say that I'm perfect at Japanese. I think at this point I've become pretty fluent. I can speak, I can get around, I have very little problem. Sometimes I'll have issues where I will try to explain something in a way that I don't know the word for, and it may not go through all the way. There are words that I don't know still, but that's like any language. You learn a lot from experience. So I recommend that if you really want to get a grasp on the language, that you do at some point come and live here and use it and meet Japanese people and learn the real language. Because no matter how much you study in a school, there's only so far you can go, depending on what your agenda is, what you'd like to do with it. If you want to translate, you could probably do that without really, I mean, depends on what you're translating, I suppose, but if you're just book translating or something, fiction, nonfiction, something like that, you may not need to live here to gain the vocabulary and cultural context, perhaps, that you might need for certain kinds of materials. But if you want to communicate with real people, I would definitely recommend that you come and spend a significant amount of time in the country and do your best to communicate with the local people. You may run into some cultural difficulties with that, but I would recommend that you get that experience so that you can, have the best foundation for when you come back to wherever your home country, your home area is, and have some context to go with the language that you've learned. And here, this video, I remember very clearly, I'm changing the subject a bit, but you might see in a moment that I slid back down the hill. Bad idea. Do not go to the top of a hill and wait at a stoplight. I learned this really quick because I saw other people doing this, and I wondered, why do you do that? You could just go up to the line. Well, this road is covered in ice, and no matter whether you have snow tires on or not, you are not getting up this hill once you get it to the top. And now I'm going to probably go backwards because I'm trying to go, and my car says that's not happening. So this was the first time I learned about icy roads. At this point, I think I'd become familiar with snowy roads, but ice is a different story. And learn from me. Do not go to the top of the hill and stop and expect to be able to continue going up. And of course, you'll see how I'm stuck between a couple of lights here. I'm just not even going anywhere. Somebody to go around me. I mean, I'm sure if you could see behind me, there's probably like a line of cars. I mean, hopefully not, because I end up having to back up down the hill just to be able to get through here. And just ice and snow. Prepare yourself if you're coming to central to northern Honshu, the main island of Japan. Oh, and of course Hokkaido. you if you don't know about Hokkaido, do your homework, because that's a totally different level of snow, shall we say. So here we are again. I'm stuck. I'm trying to go up. Nothing's happening. And I'm going, all right. And I think also the problem was, at this time, you could see a little bit of the front of my car. I was driving a Toyota Corolla, and I do not believe that was a four-wheel drive. So after I had the Corolla, I made sure that my next car had four-wheel drive, because this is not fun. Going backwards down a hill, not fun. Do not recommend 0 out of 10. It's very scary, and if you see anybody coming up behind you, stop. Pull your emergency brake. I almost went into a rice field one time on a different icy road that I wasn't expecting. Somebody had slowed down, and I almost ran into them and had to pull my emergency brake so I didn't fall off the road. So, yeah, don't go to the top of the hill and expect to keep moving once you've stopped. Unless you have a really, decent car, maybe got chains on, I don't know. I didn't see anybody have any success with this method that I tried. just more snow and ice. Like, once the snow, I mean, even today in 2021, it's January 12th, 2021, and it is snowing outside today. For the first time, it's actually sticking properly outside. So tomorrow, it will probably look like this in the same areas. As you can see, that this particular day that I'm driving, it's still snowing a lot, and also this footage is sped up because I was using Hyperlapse, which I believe is an app that either is still, or at the time I believe it was Facebook's, one of Facebook's related apps, and it automatically speeds up your footage while you take videos. So this must have been the end of the day when I was coming back from one of the preschools, and I was just driving down here, and it's still snowing, so the snow, I'm not driving this fast. It is definitely sped up, because if you were driving this fast, you are going to not be able to stop. Too icy for that. I mean, obviously that was lucky that the signal changed so quickly, but yeah, you are not stopping if you try to go against the ice. And of course, here's another one that's sped up. I believe this is also Hyperlapse, and just look at those huge snowflakes. Those are just massive. Like, it just looks so massive. This also looks like at the time when I was driving a Toyota Corolla, which was a normal sized car, so a Futsuke, Futsusha. I keep calling it Futsuke, but that's not right. My husband corrected me on that yesterday, because I don't know why. Somebody said that to me once, and it just stuck in my head. But Kei Jidosha and Futsusha are different. Here's another area where the snow is just piled up. This is more out towards the mountains on the west side. And of course there's a lot of apple fields out here, the apple orchards. Some grape fields as well, but not as much. This particular area has mostly apple orchards. And they also have some areas where you can get fire for your maki stove, which is the fire, the wood burning stoves that they sell locally around here that were actually imported by an American. It's looking like it snowed for a couple days, and it's packed down on the road, but it's also really dirty because a lot of people have driven on it. Interesting to look at now, because this area is now currently under construction, so I bet that the snow is pristine over here right now in the current time. But of course, because it's so packed down, it also is hard to drive on in some areas. Like, you kind of get into this like almost track, and it's very hard to get out of the track. Though if you are driving a four-wheel drive vehicle, then you have a better chance of being able to control where you drive. I would be a little careful, because when you're driving on these kind of roads, normally on the sides, you can't see it right now, but there are those holes in the sides that do not have grids over them, where the water will flow to the rice fields during the spring and summer, and well, early fall they cut them out, but they turn them off basically by putting this wood plank in the area, and they basically shut them off in like a oh, you can see them there. There's some open holes there. Yeah, you will literally fall into those with your car, and you don't want to fall into those with your car. Your wheel will fit, and it's not fun. Do not do that. Avoid going to the sides too far. You may fall into those or into an actual rice field, because you don't know how deep it is. So stay on the tracks, follow other people. Don't be too much of an adventurer on the road unless you know for sure that it's not going to be a hole underneath that snow. That's my recommendations for you when it comes to snow driving. Don't make your own path, ideally, in a place that you're not familiar with, because you don't know what's underneath. And it looks right now, if you look right in front of us, that road there, it looks like that's flat, right? Like you could drive out. No, that's like I think the one on the left side there, that's like a 4-foot drop or something. It's not flat at all. Don't do that. Don't try. Just stay on the road. And be careful when people are driving by. Some people drive really very, very slow to be careful, and that's for the best. So I'm really thankful now that, especially today, I don't have to drive in this in the early morning or nighttime when everybody's on the road, or even if I don't want to. Technically, I really don't have to go out in this kind of snow. unless there's something pending that really has to be done. I don't go to a normal outdoor job anymore, as in like at a school or anything. I worked at those 9 preschools for about 5 years, 4.5 years. And then I worked at the local junior high for 2 years. And after that, I've been going on my own path. As I say to you, don't go off on your own path in snow. When it comes to don't go off on your own path in careers, it's up to you. For me, I'm lucky to have a person who can sponsor my visa, which is my husband. And due to the spouse visa, I'm allowed to stay here and make my own path in a way that maybe other people do not have the access. If you are coming here as a single person with no connections in Japan, you don't have foreign, you don't have any Japanese national relatives, the chances of you being able to choose your own path in Japan are rather low, because you have to have some sort of established job usually in order to stay here. Or if you're like super wealthy or you are a celebrity or something, then you can get some sort of special visa for that. I'm not an expert on that at all, but I would recommend that if you are coming to Japan and you want to make your own path, you're going to have to either do that while you have a visa sponsored by a company working somewhere. Usually, for the majority of foreign nationals, it's teaching English, as you may already be familiar with. I'm trying to break out of that. I'm trying to break out of the mold and go my own way right now. That's why I have this YouTube channel. I actually had another channel a couple years ago, but I had to remove it due to working at the junior high. So now I have the freedom to make videos again if I'd like. Wow, that's interesting. The building on the right there we just passed no longer exists. That whole area is houses now. Brand new houses. Oh man, natsukashi ne. This is like, yeah, it looks really different now, this specific area over here. So that used to be a community pool. Unfortunately, it was already closed by the time I got here, which I'm pretty sad about because I like swimming, and the only pool in the area that was near where I used to work and I would like to go after school is really expensive, and it's the only one. So I still bite the bullet and go to that specific pool. Though I am kind of wondering now with things that are going on in 2020 and 2021, as you might be aware of, have kind of made people question a lot of subscriptions, including gym memberships, because sometimes you can't use them due to world events. So, I don't know. I really like swimming though. Like, I wish that, technically I could probably drive up to the mountain and go swimming up there, but I don't know. There's also been a lot of people that drowned up in those areas in the last couple of years, so I'm a little concerned. Like, I also like using the jacuzzi, so I'm still debating about that. But, yeah, it's just trying to find ways to get exercise, especially in this kind of season with the snow. It's just really hard to get around, and at least we have technology now. We have options for things you can do at home. Of course, when you live in Japan, don't expect to have large spaces. I don't. My office is half of my living room, which is the biggest room in our apartment, and there's not a lot of other space, so it makes things rather tiny. But that will be changing for us soon when we have a house and we have more space. But still, I wouldn't compare that to American size for sure. Anything American size, shrink it down. You'd be living in a closet. Expect that. Like, I just tell people when they say, oh yeah, you could do this. No, I live in a closet. Like, seriously. I just don't have space for that. I don't have space for any, like, just junk. No, we can't have that. We can't have random things hanging around the house. The closets are always full of whatever. And it's not even things that are, like, unnecessary. A lot of it is stuff that actually we use. We just need to put it somewhere, and there's, like, no space. So, that's just part of living in Japan. Everything, even though this is the countryside and you'd think, oh, there's all these like open fields, I bet you could build this massive house, like American-sized house. You could, but you'd be super broke. You wouldn't be able to do anything. Things are more expensive to build out here. I could do a whole nother video on just like house building, because that's what we've been working on in the last year. That's one of the projects my husband and I have been working on, is building a house out here. And yeah, it's a lot. I mean, I never thought that I could be a homeowner based on how things have gone in my adult life. You know, there's a lot of things like student loans and things that kind of make it difficult for you to really look towards those big projects, those big financial projects. But somehow we've made it work here in Japan. It's something that I could actually grasp in comparison to if we had moved back to the States. We may never have been able to be homeowners, because especially in the place where I grew up, that's way out of my reach financially, for building, especially building or even buying a used home anywhere near where I grew up is pretty dang impossible at the current rate things are at. So yeah, you can see these people around here. They're doing yukikaki, which is to shovel the snow, and people do that with their companies or the schools. You come in, you're doing that at 7 a.m. every morning when it snows. So I know some people have talked to me in the past years and, you know, why don't you like snow? It's like, I don't not like snow. I mean, I like snow. It's beautiful. But when you have to wake up in the morning and shovel it off your car and shovel it off the ground, like, it gets old real fast. So I definitely think that, you know, there's definitely wonderful things about snow, but it's also a lot. So I'm happy it doesn't snow all the time here, or as much as up north, because that's a lot. Like, even this car up here, they've got snow on the roof. I was told that technically, according to Nagano Prefecture laws, that is illegal because it can just it can fly off like a snowdrift when you're driving and hit somebody in the windshield they can't see. People sometimes shovel it off and sometimes they don't. Sometimes it flies in your windshield, like I just mentioned, and it kind of sucks. So don't be that person. Please shovel off the top of your car if you can. It's kind of like the time when I was actually in the US and I was driving on the highway and somebody's like bag of pop cans like opened up and hit my windshield and you can't see anything. I mean, and also in the States, I've also had issues with snow. When I was in high school, I was driving my car to the local community college one time for studying Japanese. I would go a couple times a week in the afternoon, and it was part of my scheduled day at the high school. I would be going to both the community college and high school at the same time. It was called Running Start, which is a program in Washington State. And I remember, you know, I'd have to drive on the highway to get out there. And one time I was driving this really old car. It was called, the brand was Infiniti, which sounds, you know, that's like a high-end car, right? No. This is like a 1993 Infiniti I was driving in 2008, 2009. And it had problems. A lot of my cars have had problems. As I've mentioned before, a lot of these videos, I'm driving around in different cars, and I can't tell you which car I'm driving in this specific video. I'm guessing it might be the Wagon R, which is my most recent car. The longest time I've driven a car was my Suzuki Wagon R, which is a K car, similar to the one that is in front of you in this video. I'm not really sure though. That looks like a Daihatsu Move, but it has a white plate, and until recently, all K cars had yellow plates, which was supposed to tell people that they're K cars, as in they're only half engine, and they will be slower than everybody else. Not always, but until like recently, most K cars didn't have the same amount of power due to the smaller engine. So that was kind of like a way to know, like, should I go around them or not? Probably should go around them if you're using a Futsusha, which is the normal engine car, your standard car. But now you can actually pay to have your K car, you know, to get it a white plate, so it matches everyone else. And people, I don't know, I guess there's some stigma about the yellow plates. I don't care, honestly. if people want to go around me and be, in a hurry, they can do that, and I don't care. So, whatever. As long as they're not being super crazy and cutting me off, like, in a really dangerous way. It's not like I drive super ultra slow, I just drive safe, and that's kept me from having any accidents, knock on wood. Never had any accidents in my life. So, I think I do a pretty good job with driving, despite having this camera up in the front of my vehicle. But it wasn't like in the way of anything. So it just, you have a little cell phone mount up on the dash of your car. That's where it was. I just turned it sideways. So, yeah. And here's, you got to stop at the train tracks here, the big station. Don't forget to do that. You stop, look left and right, and then continue. Unless the, the safety bars are coming down, and then don't go through those. That'd be bad. So, now what's awkward here is there's so much snow that you can't see where the line is. So, that's a little bit of an annoyance when there's so much snow on the road. I mean, I'm guessing that this specific day that truck, the snow cleaning truck hadn't come through here yet, or it just had been snowing so much the specific day that they hadn't been able to keep up with it, which is possible because, as you can see, I have my wipers on, and that means that it was snowing a lot. So, yeah, this is just average snow. I mean, this looks like maybe first or second day of snow, and yeah, so that's where I'm at with all the snow stuff. What else was I talking about before? I just have to, revert back here. This is just the area, and there's not a lot going on, especially nowadays, as in 2021. It's pretty quiet around here. People are trying to avoid getting sick, so majority of people are very careful. And they don't really go out much except to clean up the snow and to drive wherever they need to drive to. Yeah, you can see here, majority of cars, there's not a lot of variety of colors you see. A lot of people choose white, silvers, black. Sometimes you'll see a gray. And then you'll see some random ones, like people with anime on the side of their car, which is very rare. There's an orange one over there. Orange, I think that's a Hustler, Suzuki Hustler. Daihatsu moves are really popular. The first car that I drove when I got here was a Daihatsu Move. I think it was a 2002, so it was quite old. But it did pretty well. I don't know if it was a four-wheel drive, though, and I only drove that car for, I think, about half a year because that was a rental. When I first arrived here, the company I work for set me up with a rental service for my car, which, depending on where you end up in Japan and, of course, the situation you're in, you may or may not have that option. If you have that option, I'd say take it the first year. It isn't that cheap, but, it depends on, of course, the contract you get. Over time, I think it may be cheaper to end up owning your own car, but if you buy a used car for a low price, you're going to have issues because Shaken is a thing in Japan, which is a bi-yearly, so every other year, usually every 2 years, you have to take it in somewhere and have them look over stuff. Of course, I'm not familiar with the ins and outs of Shaken, but the annoying thing about Shaken is that they check non-essential things, a lot of stuff. So sometimes you'll, like in the States, they don't do that. The most they'll do is, like, maybe if you've driven that car for like 30 years, they'll have you go and do fuel emissions or whatever. I'm guessing that's part of Shaken, but like a lot of the times I'll do Shaken and then my car will break down a couple months later and I'll be like, so wait, this didn't show up in the Shaken, and apparently I didn't check for that, like the things that make the car run. But then you have to pay a lot of money to fix the windshield because there's a small chip in the tiniest part of the windshield that you didn't even notice from a rock or something, and that requires an entire replacement of the windshield. That has literally happened to me, and it's so infuriating, and that put me over $1,000 for just a one-time check. So if you're gonna own a car, beware of Shaken, especially if you own a used car. If you're gonna buy a new car, usually they have some sort of deal with you. where they will set it up to, like, you can get 3 years before you need to do shotgun. And if you're buying a K car, K cars don't cost as much. Also, there's car tax, by the way, as well. Every year around April or May, you will get a thing in the mail that tells you, please pay us X amount of money, depending on where you live and what their rates are. Around here, it's around, I think, $300 for a K car, if I remember right, if not less. It depends on the year, of course, and the national tax rate, but you got to pay that once a year too. So that's not even like the gas or the running costs or the repairs. And then, of course, you have insurance too. You can't just drive without insurance, especially if you work for a company. They're not going to let you do that. Did you even know that you need bicycle insurance now? Because if you get hurt on a bicycle, they'll ask for insurance in Japan. So, yeah, that's new. That's something that only came up a couple years ago. I believe at the time of this video that probably wasn't an issue, but I remember the company I worked for the longest time did require, if you owned a bicycle, you literally have to register with the local police station. It's like registering a car. You can't just have a bicycle and keep it in your backyard and not have it registered. So they required that if you owned one, you had to tell the company and you had to have bicycle insurance. So if you don't want to get a car and you think, oh yeah, it's cheaper to get a bicycle, I mean, you're not going to bike in this kind of weather, of course, but any other time of the year, I mean, depends on your situation. If you're living close to where you work, you can probably manage with a bicycle. It's a lot cheaper than owning a car, but you still have to get insurance, which is not horribly expensive, by the way. It's still cheaper to be a cyclist. Other issue around here with being a cyclist is there are no bike lanes. So there are a lot of areas with no sidewalks at all, as you've noticed, which means if you are a pedestrian or a cyclist, keep your eyes and ears open because people drive fast and there's not a lot of space for you. As you can see, this person just stepping right out in the road. You have to be careful as a person, a driver as well, because there's not a lot of space on these roads. They're very tiny. Sometimes they're only the size of one single car. And yeah, you need to always have your eyes and ears open for people and cyclists, of course. So, of course, that really, really depends on your situation. If you're going to come to Japan and you want to live here, yeah, you have to really scope out what's essential for you and what kind of finances you have. Of course, if you come here with student loans, that's another complexity. I'm there, so I understand you, and it's another thing you have to think about and take into account for whether you would like to put your money towards owning a car or renting a car or bicycling or cycling or walking. I couldn't walk to my work, so that's why I had to have a car from the beginning. And originally that wasn't my intention. I had also lived in Nagoya, which was my second exchange in university. And many of the people who are watching, including the person who really wanted this video out so she could watch it on her vacation, I met her in Nagoya, and it was a wonderful, wonderful time. I really enjoyed that time, and that's what really got me interested to come back and live in Japan, because that was the best time of my university experience, honestly. The American part of my experience in university was kind of like but the Japan experience, being here as an exchange student, was just amazing. Loved it. It was really, really wonderful, and that's why I wanted to come back here and work. Though being a student and working in Japan are very, very different. So if you are an exchange student thinking, yeah, I'd love to come back and work in Japan, that was so awesome. I want to go party with my friends every day and drink at night at the local bar and go shopping on the weekends and have all this free. No, it's not the same. Sorry, it's not going to be the same. It's going to be different, but you may have your own experience. Everybody has their own journey, and I would still recommend it to you, especially if you've been here before. You have experience that a lot of people who come here to work as foreign people do not have. especially if you have the language down, you're going to be like in a way better spot. You'll have a lot more freedom, and you'll be able to, really expand out into areas that you maybe wouldn't have had access to based on not being able to communicate, or just things that are different. And I think you should definitely check it out if you are either if you have the experience or you don't. Though you do need to come here with the knowledge that coming here to teach English situation is completely all over the board what you'll get. And sometimes you'll get a really, really nice place, excellent starting salary, excellent people to work with, excellent management, excellent school, excellent teachers you work with, excellent access. Usually you don't get all of those. I've heard of people who had to move into apartments where they had no running water. Usually it's not that bad. My first apartment was pretty bad. It wasn't quite that bad, but I had rats in the ceiling, single pane windows that broke every winter. So I had to tape them, literally tape them with like Scotch tape to keep the wind from coming through at night. What else? There's just so many things that can happen. I'm not going to go into detail about some of the experiences I've had, because some of them have been, there's positives and negatives. And I'm not going to be like, this is the best place ever, you're going to have the best time. No. Like, it's all your own thing. Like, it's all going to be, it's either, what you do with it, and it's also just what you get. Everything, life is a box of chocolates. Like, a lot of people say, Forrest Gump. You never know what you're going to get. That's pretty much any situation in life, and Japan is no different. The only differences that may surprise you is the work-life balance may not be good for you. That was an issue I really had, which really made me rethink my priorities in Japan and what I wanted for my future. And for me, I really, really want to have that freedom over my time. Japanese people work a lot. They don't have a lot of time for anything outside of work. So trying to make friends outside of work can be really, really difficult, especially if they have families. Like, forget it. Like, unless you just really, really hit it off with this person and they're willing to make time for you. And, I don't know, special situations. But for me, my experience has been just people, it's work and family, and that's about it. That's the amount of time they have, or they're just not interested in expanding their friendship circle or their relationship circles. But, you just have to keep trying and keep picking yourself up. Sometimes I've heard when I went to Tokyo to talk to people, a lot of people know that out in the rural Nagano areas, things can be very lonely at some times. Especially being a foreign person, because usually there's not many of us out here, and people don't stay, and I don't blame them. A lot of people, when I meet them and they're, they have other dreams for their life, good, you go do your thing. Like, I mean, it's kind of tiring when I make friends and they leave. Usually it's once a year, especially when I was a teacher. I'd make friends with other teachers and they would leave, and you just have to rebuild your life again every year, kind of. Not in the full way, but just like, you'd have to say goodbye to them. And the closest friends I've had, I still keep in contact with. Luckily, we have the internet. This is the age of the internet when you can still talk to people. Speaking of which, though, when you do come here, don't spend all your time on the internet. Please don't. Like, you really, really need to expand yourself, expand your horizons or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, you need to go and experience Japan while you're here. I've met some people who have come here and they really want to keep up these like video calls with their friends, like long movie watching sessions and stuff in wherever they came from, and it's like, you do that every night. I mean, do you even go outside? I mean, nowadays people don't, so maybe right now it's not a bad idea, in 2021, but like, if you can, at least you can still walk outside. It's free, and just put on your mask and go outside. Like, I mean, I'm telling that to myself too, because the only issue for me right now is that where I'm living at the moment, out in the in the rural area, can't really walk anywhere. It's pretty far. The closest train station to where I live at the moment is about an hour walk. So trying to get anywhere from where I am, pretty limited without a car. And that's something also to consider when you do come here and you're looking for apartments. That's a whole nother thing, but if you are offered different choices by the place that you live, consider the access. Especially, when you think about Japan has a lot of trains, which are awesome. Especially if you're in the city, you don't need a car. Just ride trains. It's great. When I was in Nagoya, car and bike, I'm good. That's what I thought I was coming back to. Little did I realize I'm going to be out here. I got to drive to 9 places every day. Not every day. It was like every day I went to one different place. So every week I had to drive it wouldn't be 9. It'd be like 5 different schools. And there's no way I'm walking to any of those places. Like, I tried walking once when my car broke down, and it was about a 2-hour walk. Yeah, not sustainable, not something you'd want to do every day, and the schools wouldn't be happy with that either. If you're working as an English teacher or whatever, if you're at a company, they're not going to be happy if it takes you 2 hours. I mean, I guess if you get there really early, but you're not going to be happy if you walk 2 hours in the snow one way. 2 hours, forget that. Like, or even an hour one way is like, that's super long, and it's gonna be snowy and super windy. Look at these fields, they're so flat, the wind can get really strong. That's probably why my camera's kind of freaking out right now, because in this video, because we get some really strong winds out here too in the winter, and they'll blow things over. We've definitely had some emergency alerts come out for our winds, so you don't be walking in that. You don't. I would not recommend. That's another 0 out of 10 experience. So do yourself a favor and pick a place where you can get the access that you need to things. At least now, actually that Circle K there is now a Family Mart. But at least I can walk to a convenience store from where I live. But it's, when you think of, you want to go get groceries, do you really want to walk an hour to go get your groceries? No, thank you. So, if you have to balance things out, find a place near a grocery store, near a place. Oh yeah, by the way, it's cold, right? We don't have insulation, so kerosene. Learn how to use kerosene. That's what they use at the schools and most companies as well. Kerosene is very, very important to your life in Japan. It's not my favorite. It smells a little sus. Not my favorite, but it will keep you warm. It's keeping me warm right now as I make this video. It's actually very, very warm in here. And it's also drying my laundry. Also, you don't have dryers. Forgot to mention that. If you haven't been here before, dryers are not a thing for most places you're going to live in. That's a luxury. If you're living in an apartment, you hang dry everything, even in the winter, and things don't dry outside in the winter, so you gotta dry it inside. That's why you buy the laundry stuff that says Heiaboshi. So you probably need to get some sort of laundry hanger, and you gotta get, the Heiaboshi laundry detergent so that it dries properly. So any heavy stuff, like really thick fabrics, are going to take forever to dry, depending, of course, the fibers and whatnot. But yeah, I that's why I also recommend wearing layers. So for example, if you wear heat tech, which is very popular here in Japan, of course there's cool tech in the summer as well, but in the winter, heat tech is a savior. It doesn't look like it will help you, but it does, and it also keeps you from sweating through your sweater, like your wool sweater, because you don't want to have to wash that every week. Like, I mean, first of all, that won't go well in your washer. Wool is not good in the washer. Go to a dry cleaner. But even still, like any sort of those animal fiber kind of stuff, if you're into that. If you're not, a polyester is going to be really staticky. It might not keep you that warm, but it's something, right? You don't have to wash your really heavy sweaters every week in your washing machine. And then if they're, the thick thick knits, like the acrylics and stuff, that stuff just doesn't dry very well. I'd avoid wearing one layer sweaters if you can. Wear your multi-layers, put your kerosene in your kerosene heater, and live near a place where you can get kerosene. If you don't have a car, you're gonna have to carry a really heavy thing of kerosene. You will get arms. You will get muscles in your arms. So at least there's that, you know? But if you don't have them already, it's going to be painful. So yeah, you wanna keep that in mind. Perhaps you can get a smaller, maybe like, I don't know what this, I feel like the smallest one is an 18 liter, but even that's pretty heavy. Like, I'll pick that up and carry it to my car, but carrying that home, yikes, that's a lot. So yeah, you're gonna need that. You're gonna need a stove that allows for kerosene. If you can't do kerosene, some apartments do have air conditioners built into them, usually only in one room. I would have to say that they're pretty good. Generally speaking, air conditioners are pretty good, but they can cost you a lot in electricity. Of course, if you leave them on for a long period of time, it usually helps. They say that it's worse if you turn them off and on all the time, because it causes the surge in electricity, so it ends up costing you more. Also, if you're like me and you live in an old apartment, you may cause the breaker to go off if you have the heater on and the microwave at the same time. So you may have to choose, should I eat or be cold? It's a short period of time, so you can probably manage, you know? But still, it's, you know, old apartments are cheap to live in. My first apartment, which was really not good, was $200 a month, which is like impossible. But, you know, and I'm saying USD, so Neiman in JPY, it was a little bit more than that when you think of like some of the other stuff, though somehow I never paid my water bill and no one told me about it, and I didn't know about it for like the entire time I was there. So then my company, they just didn't even look into it, and I don't know, like somehow I still had water, so somebody was paying my water bill, and I don't know who, and I don't know why I never got a bill. But my current place I live in, I chose this place myself, and I chose it because it was bigger than the place I lived in, and it was slightly newer. So as I've lived here, I have discovered that these older apartments don't have very good insulation, if not any, and as they age, things start breaking, just like anything else, right? So we've had to replace light switches. I've actually replaced some of the light fixtures because they were too short, as in like, well, they weren't too short, I guess. They were too short for me, as in the way that they would be like, they run into my head all the time, because I'm not a short person, and the average height in Japan is shorter. So if you're a taller, I'm like an average to slightly tall female in the US, and I have long legs. So Japan is not made for us, and you'll learn that as you live here, that things aren't really made, especially if you're going to live in an older space, or you are if you are driving in a car, you might notice that things are a bit smaller, you know, in general. So this video that I am taking here at this time, I believe this is 2014, and I was a passenger in this video. So this was probably one of the earlier ones when I was in somebody else's car, and I was going out with them to do something, and it was the first time I'd seen this amount of snow, probably. I mean, I don't think so, though, because I remember I had driven in it, but I don't know, maybe I just thought I wanted to take some video of driving around in this level of snow, because, you know, you just don't always see this much buildup. Of course, you who have watched this video for the majority of its length have seen a lot of the snow, but yeah, these are not in order based on time. I just kind of put them together in a way that felt semi-cohesive. This is similar to other videos I had put in this compilation, where the street is the same, but the weather is slightly different. And of course, here we are, we're going into a different area completely up in the mountains. So this area that we are driving through is the Kiso Valley. If you heard that beeping, that's my kerosene stove telling me to turn it off because it's been on for a long time. But yes, this is the Kiso Valley, and there's some ski resorts up here, you know, some onsen, the hot springs. Those are everywhere though. Literally in Japan you can find onsen on like most blocks, almost. Some of them are natural and some of them are just baths, which is the sento. Yeah, it's really beautiful to drive in the Kiso Valley, like any time of year, but especially winter, because all the trees are so pretty, and it looks like Christmas trees that are, you know, kind of painted with that snow, the fake snow, but this is real. There's lots of really long tunnels in here as you enter into the Kiso Valley, going through the mountains. Of course, if you're lucky as well, you might see a snow monkey come down from the mountains. They do live up there, and I've almost run into one before. Unfortunately, it's not in this footage, but that would have been probably kind of scary anyway. So, this probably came from a time when I had taken a friend somewhere. I believe this must have been probably 2014. It looked like in my backups when I had pulled this video out. So it was either when I had taken someone out to Kiso to see it, or at this time my car was being rented from a place down in southern Kiso, and it was really far. I had to go down there for everything, to have the tires changed, to have the repairs done. Otherwise I have to pay out of pocket. So I had to go to literally that shop. And the reason why it was so cheap is because it was so like out in the boondocks, more than even where, you know, I was living. But yeah, it's a lot. It was about like an hour and a half one way to go to this shop, and I probably had to go there to get my tires changed. Usually twice a year you have to change for winter, and then you use those studless tires for about, I guess, you know, until about April or so, when you know that it's done snowing, and then you can change over to the summer tires. And then you use those until about early November is a good time, but then you gotta really make sure you get your reservations in, because everybody's trying to get their tires changed at that time. So the auto body shops are really, really busy. Unless you do it yourself, then no problem, right? You can do it anytime. But if you own your own car, you also have to find a place to put your tires, because you have to have 2 sets of tires throughout the year, and that's another thing. In an apartment, sometimes we have a balcony, but we don't put our tires in the balcony because I think they'd barely even fit. So you have to put it somewhere, and we kind of put it on the side. But it's, you know, sometimes people, you don't know, you have to like tie up your tires so they don't get bugs or animals in them, and then you also have to mark them in some way, like maybe the outside of the bag, so that people know that it's yours. Otherwise there's confusion. Sometimes people will take each other's tires by accident. Yeah, it's a thing. It's not like people are intentionally trying to steal tires usually, but sometimes like maybe you and your neighbor have the same kind of car, and you accidentally, like, you don't remember what you'd wrapped your car's tires in, and you thought they were yours, and then you go get your tires changed, and that was your neighbor's tires, and then they're all mad about it. You know, like, you don't want to have that problem. So make sure you mark your tires. You mark, you know, you make sure you somehow keep tabs on where you put them. I forgot where I had put my tires once, because I had kept them at my friend's house, and I forgot that she had them. So I went to the shop and said, well, don't you have my tires? And they said, no, we don't keep tires here. And I said, but wait, like, I don't remember where I put them. So then I had to go over and call up some people, and then they said, oh yeah, they're over at my house. So I was, you know, that was embarrassing. So yeah, put them in a place where you know where they are, make your notes, keep yourself organized, especially when you live in a foreign country. All the documents that maybe growing up your parents were managing, or if you were, an independent person and you had to take care of yourself, that stuff still applies, of course, anywhere you live. And what's worse is that, well, not really worse, but sometimes it's a bit more complicated, especially if you can't read things yourself, what you should be keeping and what you shouldn't. If you don't know what documents you should be keeping or not, contact whoever you work for and ask them. Or find a friend and ask them, should I keep this? Is this important? And then they can tell you what it is, and you can put a little note on it, like a post-it note or something, and just, then you know what you need. And if you put a post-it note on it, then when somebody asks you, for some reason you need to change your bank account, or you're moving, oh man, it's such a mess when you move, especially in Japan. Everything adds up so much. It's it's a lot. And then you gotta register at a different place, and just so much stuff. So anyways, that's all I'm going to talk about today. I hope that it was educational and that you can get something out of these videos. And let me know if you have any comments or suggestions of what I should talk about in future videos. I have more driving footage that I can share with you from throughout the year. So let me know. Thank you for watching. If you made it to the end of the video, you might enjoy this little bonus story. So I realized earlier in the video I forgot to tell you the story about my car in the US, and I'll tell you about it now. So basically, I was on the highway, aka freeway, in the US, and I was coming back from the university, well, actually community college, and on the way back it started snowing like crazy, which is very unusual for the place that I grew up in. So, unfortunately, my windshield wipers just stopped working. And that meant that my entire windshield was covered with snow on the freeway while I'm driving at 60 miles an hour. And I could not see for the life of me. So I had to get off the freeway somehow. So I stuck my head all the way out the window and drove myself off the exit and barely made it through. Moral of the story? Get your maintenance checks.